So today I'm going to discuss my remediation plan and also what I ended up doing with my case study student Henry. So I found that at his present level performance, he did really good with phonics and phonemic awareness, but his big struggle was comprehension. More specifically, main idea and detail. Like I said earlier, his Fountas and Pinnell level is like about a level Y, give or take. I found that the student could attempt decoding words that are like above 2 syllables. Even though he wasn't perfect at it, he still managed to attempt. He could decode text with a relatively high accuracy and also demonstrate adequate fluency as indicated by his running record, and he also utilized good phonics and phonemic awareness, as I said earlier. It wasn't a struggle for him at all. I found that the student couldn't determine the main idea of a passage. Like I said, he basically stuck to 2 to 3 details and didn't get the whole picture. And he couldn't really focus on more than a couple details about a text or think about multiple contexts for vocabulary. So initially my plan for case study 3 was to do main idea, detail, and then put everything together. However, he didn't meet my learning goal for the first lesson. Because of it, I had to reteach it, and also there is basically a learning target goal that I didn't really end up using. So the first learning goal I had was the student will be able to identify the main idea of 5 example articles with 100% accuracy. The other one that I had was the student will be able to identify the detail that doesn't match the others 5 times with 100% accuracy, and using evidence from the text, Henry will be able to determine the main idea and details with 100% accuracy. I didn't really end up using it with a full text, but I did use it with the worksheets that I created for him. Speaking of which, as I crafted my remediation activities, I thought about what I needed in the moment. Like, for instance, I would plan the week 1, basically the first lesson on that week. So week 1, I planned everything before Thursday, and then I would teach on Thursday. I planned lesson 2 before the week after Thursday, and I taught it that Thursday, so on and so forth. So the first lesson activity I had for him was writing the main idea worksheet. I tried looking for worksheets that would fit what I wanted him to do, but there just wasn't any. So I created a worksheet from scratch using Google Drive. On this worksheet, I basically used article titles from the ReadWorks website, and I had the student determine the main idea by looking at the title alone. I didn't give him the actual article because I didn't have access to it unless I could prove that I was actually teaching at a school. So what I did was that I modeled the first question first, and I walked him through what I wanted him to do together. And then I had him write down what he thought the article was going to be about, and basically how he knew. I utilized some metacognition there. And this repeated for about as many questions as he could do. So he didn't meet my learning target for the first one. I wanted to do detail for the next lesson, but I had to reteach a main idea, so instead of making it written, I decided to make it multiple choice. I pulled titles from articles, which was partially from the internet and partially from my own imagination, and I gave him basically 3 options for the main idea, and I had him circle the correct answer. If he got an answer incorrect, I basically just walked him through the correct answer. And lesson 3, which is details worksheet, and I was able to make him a small worksheet where we'd have to read a short paragraph and determine the detail that didn't belong, and then I would have him find a brief main idea and then have him come up with a title for the article. But midway, I noticed that having him find the main idea was dragging him down, so I had him stop doing that. So I had this lesson focus fundamentally more on detail rather than putting it together. So basically he made very slow but steady progress. Like I said, on the first worksheet, I noticed that he was struggling with it quite a bit. Like, he didn't meet my learning target and he didn't get the amount of questions on his own. And when he would, I write, why I think this way, he would sometimes just write one word. It's like, I think this way, one word, because I think this way because Wi-Fi. Or I think this way because esports competitive gaming. So he didn't meet my learning target. I took it as both like his lack of comprehension skills and me making the worksheet too complex for his reading level. So come the second one, I changed it to a multiple choice worksheet, and I noticed that he had a much easier time. He got like a couple questions wrong, but I had him look back at the title and had him think about, well, what's the big picture of this whole title. He was able to figure out the mistakes on his own. And during the third lesson, he was still able to meet the learning target even when I had him discard finding the main idea. I did have to correct him a few times, however, but fundamentally he was able to figure it out. Because the most important learning target I had for him was him determining the relevant detail, and he was able to meet that. Everything else was just like extra fluff to have him learn more. So, as for his reaction, he wasn't too particularly thrilled about having to do lessons with me. As I would say, as it's time for remediation lessons, he would go, ugh. And honestly, that's to be expected. Middle school students significantly care more about what their peers think of them. And it doesn't really look cool to have you pulled aside by a college student to do basically layman's remediation lessons. But despite this, I'd try to make him feel comfortable with me. I'd treat it like as if it were a whole group lesson. I would joke with him when it was appropriate. And I even made some questions centered around his interests. He didn't like overtly react about that, but I can tell that he appreciated it. Because middle schoolers tend to focus on stuff more when it's about their interests. I didn't really have to worry about keeping him focused because he managed to stay focused on his own mostly throughout the lesson. And once again, that's to be expected of middle schoolers. They should be able to focus at that age group. And even though I couldn't really get a separate environment, he's still managed to basically just get down to business. And he also actively tried with the lessons, even if he didn't really know what he was doing. He didn't like put down his pencil and say, I give up, this is too hard. As for the feedback I give to him, I'd try to keep positive and I would stay engaged with him so I wasn't just like leaving him to his own devices. With each question, I would start with like, so what do you think this is? To basically have him practice some metacognition. Well, not metacognition, more like thinking about what he was thinking. And if he got a question right, I would ask him about how he knew it was right. He often didn't know, so I would have to walk him through his thinking. However, if he got a question wrong, I would have him basically look at the question again and go through it together. Like, for instance, during the main idea multiple choice worksheet, for the questions he got wrong, I had him basically just read the title again, and he got it on his own. So essentially, it was successful, relatively successful, even if it was for like only 3 lessons, 1 day a week.